Hey, it's Darwin Day. We have Darwin Day cupcakes. Let your curiosity flow.
Hey, welcome to Ecophilia. Such a great turnout. And you got a real treat tonight. I mean, lots of real treats.
Well, right here.
Yeah. I mean, you've already heard that it's Darwin Day, and there are these Darwin Day beautiful cupcakes up here. You don't have to be shy. You can come up at any time. And there's always little shot containers. So I got a feeling that we're going to be doing shots in this evening, correct? And it's always a good evening when you're doing shots. It might be shots of maple syrup, so don't get your hopes too high. Anyway, welcome to Ecophilia. So this group, you know why we're here. Anyway, this is really fun this month because we have one of our own, Dan Best, and Dan is part of what we call the junta. It actually does the planning, so we have Dan Schaffler, who's at the bar there, next to Clyde, and we have Dan, and we have Rich Benz, and myself, and Steve Magwell, who hopefully might make an appearance after another doctor's appearance and therapy down at the clinic. But anyway, we try and keep this going. We're honoring the memory of Peter Pesch, but also the legacy of bringing curious minds together, learning about new stuff in a social setting with beer and pizza. I mean, you can't. I mean, this is sort of our version of Science Cafe, and we're really happy that you are here. So, Dan, other than this illustrious status as part of the junta that runs Ecophilia, was the chief naturalist and a naturalist at the Geauga Park District for 32.
Well, I wasn't chief naturalist the whole time. So.
Not the whole time.
Yeah, just a naturalist.
You had that head of naturalist services and grand poobah. He is one of the finest naturalists I know in the state of Ohio, actually anywhere in this region. He's got a story for everything. And he used to do a program on WKSU with Jim Bloom, and an award-winning radio program that did these field trips, and they did this wonderful deep dive into natural history topics around there, and Dan's voice was just perfect. It's always familiar, warm, generous, open, drew you in, but with tons and tons of really cool information and things that you would never have known about if you weren't listening to me. That's the best introduction I can probably get. But at Geauga Parks, over the years that he was there, they had these wonderful exhibits like the Biocentennial and what was the Ice Age one?
Oh, Engage the Ice Age.
Engage the Ice Age. And if you went out to Westwoods, their nature center there, they would just transform it into these exhibits that were really, really fabulous. They were very, very well done. And he was, along with all of his colleagues, they were the force behind that. He's been involved in the planning for Orchard Hills and the planning for Observatory Park. Some of these revolutions, having a park that's devoted to dark skies and astronomy and observatory, pretty cool, particularly when it's next to Case's old observatory out there in Montville.
Montville,
I got it. Okay. Anyway, I mean, I could go on and on and on. He's a fabulous storyteller, a fabulous naturalist, and it's our privilege and pleasure to hear tonight talking about something that is on the rise. It's our February thaw, and that's maple syrup. Dan Best, take it away.
Jeez. Well, Harvey, with that billing, I don't know. Now I am nervous. Yeah. Jeez. Okay, well, listen, I grew up in Avon Lake, and that wasn't maple syrup country, really. That was more grape growing country. And in fact, in our family, we have a winery, Klingshire Winery out there. And let's see, so however, in stating my maple production pedigree here, we have up on the screen, these are my great aunts and uncles in Sheffield Township in Lorain County. My great-grandfather was the farm manager for the James Day Farm, which today is, part of it is French Creek Reservation of the Lorraine Metro Parks, and another part of it is is the James Day Park of Sheffield Township. So there they are making maple syrup with probably a homemade flat bottom evaporator there. And out front in that upper right-hand corner, there's Veronica Conrad. They were the Conrads, or being a German community, it would have been pronounced Kunrad. So, and Veronica was always called Frau'n, so we got Frau'n Kunrad there, and she was a force to be reckoned with. But, and there she is with her brother. So, but that's kind of where my maple sugaring heritage ended there. However, I worked from 1987 to 2019, about 33 years with Geauga Park District, and from day one, it was maple sugaring every March. And we displayed and demonstrated the history of maple sugaring going all the way back to prehistoric times up to modern times, and did programming for families, for preschoolers right on up to high school with school kids and so forth like that. And I think what a lot of what I have to present tonight I owe to a series we did called Sweet Memories of Maple Sugaring, where we had panels of multi-generational members of the longtime maple producers out in Geauga County. And it's, so got a lot of insight from that, a lot of great stories from that. So, okay, Rich, go ahead. Yes, so, yeah, so my perspective for maple, okay, you hear me bandying back and forth between maple sugaring, which is the old traditional name when actually sugar was produced prior to syrup, and today it would be called maple production. So, so they're synonymous here. So, you know, most of my perspective here is from Geauga County, of course. However, go ahead, Rich. There we go. Ohio is just one part of the Maple Belt, and you can see the geographical area there. As climate warming continues, this geographical area may shift north. So, so anyway, what I have to present here today will really go for not just Geauga County, but for most of the Maple Belt in its entirety. Okay, so with its origins in Native American know-how, maple sugaring has become deeply rooted in the history, the economy, and the culture of Ohio, and certainly Geauga County, the maple capital of Ohio. And so we'll be tapping into the early history of maple sugaring as this program flows into a nostalgic look at 20th century maple production. Okay, so, okay, go ahead, there we go. All right, it all starts with the sugars in the sap. So the result of the previous year's sun-powered photosynthesis, in which, powered by sunlight, where sun's energy is turned into food energy here. Tree roots take up water, and in the presence of sun, produces, and taking in carbon dioxide from the air, carbon dioxide and water, and we get sugars, we get glucose. So the sugar's in the tree. Okay, go ahead there, Richard. So when we get weather like we're going to have this coming week, by the way, President's Day week is a traditional tapping time. That's when we make holes in the trees to get the sap out. You wouldn't believe the number of people that think that you can hold your dish of pancakes right up to the tree and get syrup coming right out of it. But So we get this weather, and now in recent years with warming, only because we had this what's now unusually cold winter, where in recent times a lot of maple producers are tapping in January to get those early sap runs. But this year it's going to go back to traditional time. Anyway, when we get nights that are below freezing and then daytimes when the temperature comes up above freezing, it creates an internal pressure in the trees. So during the night, the sap is rising in the trees. And then during the day, the warmth of the day, the sap is actually flowing down, back down to the roots. So as this tree is kind of coming out of dormancy, where the sugar, which has been converted to starch and down in the roots all winter, starts to be converted back to sugar and is moving up with the sap. And then on the way back down, that's when we intercepted the sap flow from the inner bark, the phloem there. So that's the kind of weather we want to get the sap flowing. Okay. Next, yeah, there we go. So why maple? Well, you can get syrup made from a variety of other trees: walnut, butternut, hickory, birch. I've tried birch and hickory. It was like made from a concentrate, so it was, But so maple is number one. Maple produces a sweet sap in greater quantity, and so it tastes better, and so that has. It's maple syrup. So, okay, there we go. Go ahead there, Richard. So, no matter what historical period we look at, from prehistoric times to modern times, the different stages or phases of maple sugar or maple production are the same. We've got to get access to sap. So that's called tapping into the tree. Then we got to capture that flowing sap coming out of the tree. And then we have to collect the sap in a container and transport it to wherever it's going to be boiled down into sugar or syrup. So there we go. So about 5 different phases there. All right, Rich. Okay. So there's been, Native Americans have had thousands of years in this region right around here, probably since things vegetated after the Ice Age, so we're talking probably 13,000, 14,000 years. Maples weren't the first trees to come in, certainly. We were more like northern Canada. We had spruce, fir, birch, and all that. But at some point, probably at least the last 10,000 years, Native peoples here they were using the forests, the streams, and so forth as their grocery store, their hardware store, their pharmacy, and so somewhere along the line, and there's legends where they describe the origins of maple sugaring, and since they didn't have a written language, so prehistoric times really here ended locally here with the journals of the Jesuit missionaries. So that's what really put us into out of prehistoric into historic times. So, okay, Rich, there we go. All right, so what they did is to obtain sap, they gashed the trees, probably with stone axes. This is before they had metal tools. So for this thousands of years, they did this, and using a slat of wood or a piece of bark, inserted into that gash, they would channel the flow into a bark container. Now, in the northern Great Lakes region, New England, southern Canada, where there's a lot of birch trees, birch was very handy for making a lot of different things, including birch bark canoes, the first thing that comes to mind. But their wigwams were covered with, it was like 4x8 pieces of birch bark. And and the baskets or the containers to catch the sap. Now, around here, we don't have that kind of birch. We don't have the gray birch and the paper birch that was so utilitarian like that. What we had, and was used probably more, and certainly, and I think even aside from dugout canoes, bark canoes were probably made of elm bark. Elm bark is what they covered the wigwams with here. They could get it off the trees when the sap was flowing and just use that in big slabs, big sheets to cover wigwams and make their canoes and sap collecting containers there. Okay, Rich. So the native people, what you needed to do to make sugar is you had to drive off, you had to boil away, get rid of water. Well, they would make large troughs, much like they would make a dugout canoe, using the log there. So how would they hollow out a log? Well, they had the stone axes. Well, they just weren't that sharp. So I believe the sap troughs as well as the dugout canoes that they made, it was a process of chopping and burning. So you used fire, and then you chopped charcoal with the stone axes until you got what you wanted there. And they would put the sap in there as they collected it. And one good way, overnight when it goes below freezing, in the morning you could break away the ice and get rid of a lot of the water that way. It save you some boiling time. And here, well, what they're doing, and you can't see it very well, but what they're doing is putting fire-heated rocks into the sap to bring it to a boil. So I don't know what they're doing with their hands in there. I guess they're pulling the cooled rocks out. Yeah. You might see them go. Okay, where am I? Okay, yes. Okay, and then, yeah, fire-heated rocks in there. Yeah, good. So another way of doing this was there's actually, you can, they would make, that's a popular phrase today, small batches, in bark containers where they would put the hot rocks directly in that. And you can see that it's long, it's laborious, but it can be done. Now they could also do, and this is where this illustration is not correct, using like birch bark, which is it's full of volatile oils. It burns very easy. In fact, birch bark is a great survival fire starting tinder, you know. But you could set a birch container full of the sap right on the coals, and the liquid, the sap acts as a heat sink and draws the heat, and it doesn't burn up the container. However, if you put above the flames like this, you're asking for trouble there. So they're going to end up with their sap putting out their fire. So, yeah, that's not accurate. But, yes. Okay, go ahead. Now we get into the early American period, the early to mid 1800s, and the age of settlement around here. Now, the Yankee settlers of New England had already been interfacing with the native people in the 1600s and 1700s, even before they got out here. But being the Western Reserve, who were we settled by? The Connecticut Yankees and other New England settlers, who had already had like 2 centuries of maple. They got here as ready-made maple producers. You know, we all know that everybody seems to know, well, yeah, who invented maple sugar? Well, the natives did. And so where did our early pioneers learn how to? Well, from the Native Americans. Well, the Native Americans here were like refugees. There was just a few left. There have been way more than I want to explain in the cultural disruption and so forth of that the people who lived here, and they certainly were here, a few were here as literally as vagrants, I'm sorry to say, when settlers were still here. So yeah, they came, early settlers of Western Reserve came here already knowing about it. Now the advantage that they had was metal tools. And they could chop out a trough to catch the sap. They had kettles, so they didn't need to hollow out a log. And if I get back to my notes here, so prior to settlement, the first explorers, the fur trade was going through here. So the native peoples would trade pelts for metal tools, knives and axes and kettles as well. Now, after the fur trapping was all depleted through this area, maple sugar made by the natives became the trade item for obtaining tools and so forth. So, now the other thing that, go ahead there, Rich. Yeah. So the native people, the woodland people, continued to trade for, yes, the iron kettles and the tools and so forth, so they could have something to trade for things they needed. All right, so let's see. Go ahead. Yeah. Well, there's, you see, the big iron kettle, the all-purpose iron cauldron. All-purpose because they use this to scald hogs and make apple butter, make soap, and so forth, and potash. So our great period of deforestation started with settlement. And all these large trees, there wasn't a timber market yet, because there wasn't real good ways to transport, and there wasn't sawmills yet. So they just had to burn trees to get them out of the way. So imagine all that expensive hardwood that went up in flames. But anyway, but one of the products, and probably one of the first exports from North America back to Europe was potash. So they would, take the ashes from burning the wood, and they would soak that, and the liquid that leached out of that was lye, which again, lye made mixed with animal fat was soap. But the potash itself was used for all kind of things. It was used to make, it was a principal ingredient of fertilizer. He made gunpowder from it and so forth like that. So there's quite a market for that. So glass, wool bleach, so forth like that, potash, a major product of the frontier settlements, along with sassafras root bark, and that's another story for another day. Okay, so maple sugaring time, and we'll pause here for a second. This was, imagine you've been cooped up in a one-room cabin all winter long. And how much we complain about cabin fever we've had like this winter. Well, imagine living just in a cabin like that. And, you're just looking at your family members. Your nearest neighbors were, like a mile or two or more away. And you just had the wolves howling at night to keep you company. And, yeah, so this was a real coming out party, maple sugaring time. So people would gather from the settlements around, and they would set up a sugaring camp there, build a lean-to that they would, as they were tending the kettle in shifts, and they would be telling stories and gossip and probably singing and so forth like that. It was a great time. So, yeah. So, and make no mistake, since what little corn they could grow, there wasn't a market or good transportation for that. So corn liquor was a commodity, and they were probably passing around the jug while they were watching the kettle, make sure you didn't burn the sap in it. And there is a story in the Geauga County Pioneer history about a couple guys that was their shift to watch the sap kettle, and they were passing the bottle back and forth, and I think had a little too much, and they thought it would be a real hoot to pour some into the kettle with the and they did, and then they fell asleep, and then a bear wandered in. And of course, by now the fire's going out, and so the liquid is cooling, and this bear is lapping it up. And the next morning, they woke up to find the bear passed out. And which they dispatched the bear, and they had bear steaks that night. But so yeah, it was fun and fellowship during the sugaring off parties. That producing the year's worth of maple sugar. Now remember, prior to any markets or anything like that, this was it for sugaring, for sweetener. Say, well, what about honey? Well, honeybees aren't native. Honeybees had to be imported from Europe. So in the very early years of settlement, it was maple sugar was the sweetener. Okay, all right, there. We'll start with this. Go back one there. You see okay, no, yeah, right there. Okay, there's a guy standing there in the middle, and he's blowing something. Looks like he's blowing bubbles, and he is. But what he's got is a little skinny twig he's got bent into a circle, and a way of finding out that it was boiled enough was you would blow on that little film of syrup, and if you could make a bubble, that was an indication it was done. So that's what he was doing there. Okay, so let me explain about the boiling in the kettle there. And okay, so you've got this big kettle, and it's got a lot of surface area. And so as the liquid is boiling down, you're getting more of, the liquid is in, this is, all right, you'll figure out what I mean. You got less liquid to ratio to heating surface area. So it can burn. So how did you prevent that? You kept diluting it with putting more sap in there. So by the time that you had any amount of, and you had to boil it past the point of syrup, because there was no way of preserving or keeping syrup. That didn't come till much later. So they had to boil it past the point of syrup to where if you stirred it, it crystallized. And if you've ever been to a maple festival or whatever, you get your little dish with your little heavy syrup, and you stir it until it crystallizes. That's what they did. And they could store the blocks of sugar that way, and probably put them in wood containers so the mice wouldn't get it. But anyway, so yeah, they would, and there was ash in there, and taste kind of burnt. It wasn't ideal. But okay, go ahead, Rich. Let's see what's next. Yeah, so that great early Americana, the sugar camp between the burl or courier knives, lithographs, and the how many of you remember these? How many of you had these kind of dishes at home with the courier knives on them? Yeah, the Royal China dinnerware. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Rich. All right, spiles. Spouts are called spiles. Now, the early ones, initially.
Dan?
Yes.
Spelling?
Spelling? Spile. S-P-I-L-E. Spile. Got it? All right, good. They were carved out of wood, and not just any wood. They were made from either elderberry or sumac, and I don't mean poison sumac, I mean like the staghorn sumac, whatever. And they were used because the inside of the little branches or twigs, it had a very soft center, which botanically is called, now listen carefully, pith. I'm not using an inappropriate term with a lisp. It's called pith, P-I-T-H. P-I-T-H. Okay. And because they could just take a hot wire or something and burn out that pith or get it out of there. And it worked very good. And they would taper the ends so they could, after using an auger, to tap the tree. But why did they make them so long? It's because they weren't strong enough. You couldn't hang a bucket on there. And so you had to use the trough. And the buttresses of the tree wouldn't allow you to snug that trough right up to the trunk of the tree. So, so that's what they did there initially. Okay. Go ahead, Rich. Then you had to haul the sap to where it was going to be boiled. And generally that was done with the shoulder yoke. And as settlements got more established, the trades got established, every little settlement had a blacksmith, had a miller, you know, all these little streams around here had mills on them with water wheels that ground the wheat and corn into meal. But so another very important trade was the cooper, who made barrels, because they didn't have Tupperware. They didn't have Rubbermaid. Everything that had to be stored was put in barrels. So the cooper was the barrel maker, and so they were readily used. You get half of a barrel, and you've got a sap bucket that you'll see eventually made their way onto the trees. But you had the gathering pails. You went from buckets to gathering pails, and the gathering pails you carried on a yoke, a shoulder yoke, and you're counterbalanced with two of them there. And a full pail would be, that's about 8 pounds of liquid there. So that was a lot of work. And you're walking through the woods, and you got melting snow, and you've got water. It's wet and it's cold, and wet feet and so forth. For you couldn't wait for it's your turn to be around the fire. But anyway, initially they used oxen, and this is the oxen that pulled their wagons from New England to here. They were the grunt animals, and they also, the oxen were, they were like bulldozers. I mean, they would use those oxen to dig out the stumps. So once you got the tree down and burned it out of the way, you had to get the stumps out so you could have a garden plot or a field. So oxen. Okay, we'll go next. Okay, there's that big iron kettle there. And I believe these were casted, and this is something I'm not real clear on production of this, and maybe somebody here, is they would sand cast these. And what was the source of iron? Well, our local sandstones were very iron rich, but also there was bog iron, which is a precipitate that forms in wetlands. And so bog iron was really big for casting these and other metal implements. Okay, go ahead there, Rich. So you got to tap the tree. Well, again, once you have village blacksmith, and now you can make augers. And this is something we always had fun letting the kids tap trees in different ways. So with the old auger there. Okay, next. How deep, that's a good question. How deep do you have to go? About 1.5 inches to get you into the sapwood. Beyond that, you're just wasting energy, and you're getting into hard, solid wood. You're getting beyond the sapwood itself. Okay, so yeah, the coopers made the gathering pails, and the big gathering tanks that they put on top of a sled that the oxen pulled. Okay, go ahead. Okay, now as time went on, factories became established. Pail factories that made wooden buckets and so forth like that. And then going, along this time too, go ahead there, Rich. We have, I have to stop and tell you this. Getting away from that big iron kettle. You got 3 kettles here. Well, this was an improvement. Once these were available through as travel routes and shipping routes, whether it's canal or wagons or whatever, you could get a trio of iron kettles there. So what you did is you did the initial boiling in the first kettle. But instead of having, as it boiled down, instead of having to dump more sap in there, you would move it on to another kettle and then put fresh sap in that first kettle. And then as that thickened, you would move it to the finishing kettle. So it made a higher quality syrup. You didn't get that burnt taste to it. Okay there, Rich, what do we got here? Yes, and they, again, made it into sugar because there's no way of preserving syrup except for immediate use. So there's a block of maple sugar. Okay. So now in towns, and commerce became, as it became established by the mid-1800s, West Indies sugar cane became widely available. But abolitionists called for boycotts of imported sugar cane produced by slave labor and declared maple sugar was the moral alternative. However, eventually cane sugar overtook maple sugar as America's main sweetener. Okay. So we're getting into the mid-1800s, and I can't say this enough. At every point in its history, when better tools and better materials became available, they were readily incorporated into maple sugaring. To take something that is seasonally unpredictable, is the seasonally being that you don't know if you're going to have a week of good sugaring weather. Your maple season may last a week, it may last a month. But you really you can't let a good run go by. You have to, when you have the sap, you've got to work it. So any tools that came along that made this easier, less labor intensive or more efficient were readily incorporated. So instead of the auger, wow, this was huge. The brace and bit. Yep. And how many of you still have those in the toolbox at home? Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Okay. Now, about this time, also, the oxen had kind of lived their lives and were replaced with draft horses because advancements in the newer type of farm machinery, plows and so forth, that were being produced were better pulled by horses, draft horses. So they replaced the old oxen. Okay, next we have, all right. What was also going on is maple sugar regained some of its former market share lost to cane sugar during the Civil War as cane sugar and molasses became in short supply. These sweeteners were imported from Cuba through southern ports, which were blockaded by the Union Navy, causing sugar shortages. So it's like, oh, well, let's go back to that good old maple syrup, maple sugar. Okay, there you go, Rich. I think despite all the amazing advances in maple production in today's technological world, I think the single most revolutionary advancement was sheet metal. About the time of the Civil War, first, showed up as tin cans that food were contained in. But now, you can make tin containers that you can you don't have to make it into sugar. You can make it into syrup because now you got tight, airtight cans. And now not only can you store it for long periods of time, but you could also ship it around. So maple production was moved from, it was going from the local barter economy or home use into a market economy. Okay. Next. And with the invention of sheet metal, we get the evolution of evaporators. So with evaporators, you have, instead of a kettle with a round bottom, you have a flat bottom pan with much more heated surface in contact with the sap and syrup. So, yeah. Sap could be boiled down in shorter periods of time, resulting in a higher quality syrup than just the kettle boiled sap. So, okay, go ahead. Evaporators were mounted on a top of a brick base called an arch that contained a firebox under the pan where initial boiling took place, and the syrup was finished off in the back pan. So, yeah, initially most of the water was boiled off. So you have to get, your sap is maybe 2% sugar, and you've got to get it to about 67% sugar, or 67 or 66%, or not percent, Brix. Brix is a measure of density in liquid, which is very important in winemaking and things like that. Sweetness. So the sugar content, yeah. Yeah, that's, oh, for Christ's sake. I could make quips about being thick as a brick. B-R-I-X. Brix. Brix. Because if you didn't boil it enough, if you got below 66 or 67%, the syrup would mold. And if you got it above that, it would crystallize in the can. So, all right. Okay. So, okay, you're good. That's where we want to be right now. Now, notice this. Notice that the bottom of this evaporator pan, it's corrugated. And that gave you, in the same amount of surface or space, you had a lot more heating surface there. Again, that would get you sap to syrup faster. Okay. Okay. All right, good. So we got accordion folded flue pans and greater efficiency here. Okay, next. Evaporators were manufactured in Northeast Ohio. The venerable G.H. Grimm evaporators were first made in Hudson, Ohio, before moving to Vermont. The IXL evaporators were made in Middlefield, and the Parks and Barker made evaporators in their tin shop behind Main Street on Chardon Square. So that was their sailing. So easy to use, even the little kids can handle it. Well, the older evaporators had these pulley systems that they would take off the syrup by lifting it up and moving it much the same way as you would move batches of sap to syrup in kettles. Well, with the evaporators, as they progressed or evolved here, go ahead, let's see what's next. Okay. It would, what you got was, and this is where my Harvard project physics in high school kind of fails me. But as the sap is being boiled and it's becoming thicker, denser liquid, it sets up its own gradient. The evaporator is not tilted, but as it gets thicker, as it moves towards being finished as syrup, it moves under its own gradient over the hot part of the fire where, it's taken off as syrup. So you can have it as dilute sap at one end of the evaporator and coming out syrup at the other. Okay. All right, next. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, going back. So what's this guy doing? Well, instead of using high-tech hygrometer or whatever, he's simply watching how the syrup is sloughing off, sheeting off of that scoop there. And that scoop is used to get foam off. You get a lot of foam from the minerals that's in the sap as it boils. And he's seeing how it's coming off of that scoop there as an indication if it's done or getting close to it. Okay, next. All right, so then what you have, the syrup, you have to filter it because there are minerals, soil minerals, that are in the sap, and during the boiling process, they precipitate. And so you get what's this grit left called sugar sand, which is precipitated minerals. So in the old days, they would pour it through an old wool blanket, and eventually they had wool filters that looked like big socks that they poured the hot syrup through there. And now they have filter presses. But anyway, okay, go ahead there, Rich. Okay, now these evaporators, that was a big investment. That was an expensive piece of equipment, which led to the development of buildings to house the evaporators called the sugar houses, and originally called sugar shacks. So that's the term sugar house came from. Okay. Okay, there, go ahead. Now, as the metal industries, during the Industrial Revolution, following the Civil War, you had the wood utensils and tanks and so forth that were replaced by metal, and eventually galvanized metal, hot-dipped galvanized metal that prolonged their life. So gathering pails, gathering tanks, and sap storage tanks just took over. So that's another, we go from the age of wood into the age of metal. And, go ahead, spiles. Now we've got spiles that will hold a bucket, either made from rolled sheet metal or cast metal. So tap the tree and pound these in, tap these in, and you can hang the bucket right on them. And a lot of the buckets, both wood and metal, had lids. So I used to like to ask the kids, well, why do you want lids on that? Well, some kids would say to keep keep the deer and the bear and so forth from drinking the sap, but also it kept a lot of the detritus, the little bits of tree bark and so forth. But most importantly, it kept the rain out that would further dilute the sap and prolong your boiling time. Okay, so, where are we? Okay, go ahead. And again, I may have made this point already, but now you have syrup in cans. And now this could be shipped around, it could be marketed, and kept syrup for a longer time. Okay. Most producers in the mid-20th century, well, most of them were farmers. And this maple sugaring occurred between harvest time in the fall and planting time in the spring. So it was a little bit of much of a downtime as farmers get. And so it worked out well that way. The local Amish, which we have in the Amish community out in Geauga County, have long been practitioners of maple sugaring, maple syrup production, and still maintain a very large presence in the present day maple production. Yeah.
Just a quick question on that. So, as people are, farming in the West Coast, they're giving preference to keeping maple trees around for the maple sugar season, was that changing ultimately the species composition of the forests that remained, the woodlots and the like?
Well,
Preferring sugar maple to other species of trees?
I think there was some bias towards maple trees for that. You know, Geauga County not being flat, being really hilly. It's much hillier than Ashtabula County to the east. It's much hillier than most of Geauga County. So for one thing, topography was going to leave more trees around during the Great Deforestation period of the first half of the 1800s. But yes, I think, yeah, maple definitely. And
do we see that today? I mean, do you see that legacy?
well, yeah, kind of, because the major forest type for our region as a whole is American beech sugar maple. And so what old growth you find generally tends to be beech maple. And we'll get in a little bit more of that here shortly. But yeah, it's, you can still see properties that were sugared for years or tapped for years, and that's where the big maple trees are. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So with waves of immigration in the early 1900s feeding the growth of urban populations and growing cities, tariffs, go ahead there, you can get that. Yeah, well, that was a good one there. Sorry. The importation of cane sugar went away because of tariffs imposed on the importation of cane sugar. Went away as the demand for sugar outpaced maple production. Okay, so we're in the 20th century now. Okay, now we go. Okay, however, during World War I, the rationing of sugar to support troops raised demand for farm-produced maple syrup. So this was 20th century's kind of periods of ups and downs. And so yeah, you were rationed sugar, and so it's like, hey, we can home produce, or we can get locally made and not subjected to rationing good old maple syrup. Okay, go ahead, Rich. Now, also came upon these old articles that maple syrup becoming a hot item here. Burglars would break into the freight stations along the railroads, and they would get in there with their brace and bit and not tap a tree, but tap the shipping crates and stick in a spout and carry home their own can full of maple sugar, or syrup, I should say. Now you come to World War II, and with the international shipping disrupted, major sources of cane sugar, specifically the Philippines, were lost as the Japanese advanced across the Pacific. So sugar rationing boosted the demand for domestically produced maple sugar. There, another little historical point there. Truth in advertising. Now, what most people put on their pancakes and waffles is flavored corn syrup. You know, Aunt Jemima's, help me here, Log Cabin, Mrs. Butterworth's, Vermont Maid, and so forth like that, are flavored corn syrup. So maple producers, as they got organized, demanded that, look, don't tell people this is maple syrup. You got to tell them, you got to fess up to what it really is. Now, they may have flavored that corn syrup with some maple sugar to bring about more of a maple flavor. Okay, so, all right, by the early 20th century, advances in syrup production resulted in higher quality with a standardized grading of syrup from the lightest, most delicately flavored for the Epicureans to the dark, strong-tasting syrup that was left for baking or for flavoring chewing tobacco. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, next one there. Now, what I learned is, from a lot of these multi-generational, long-time maple producers, will tell you that they have sap in their veins. It being a enterprise that got passed along from generation to generation. So with that came memories of tapping trees by moonlight in order to catch that big sap run coming up, and scattering buckets is not to miss that big run. Okay, go ahead. Gathering sap with a team of draft horses. Mishaps like overturned sap sled, I've seen that happen. Spilled sap tanks, drinking fresh sap straight out of the bucket. That's good tonic. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, and then you had gathering sap with a team of horses. Okay, yes. Early morning gatherings. Now, just like the natives would bust the ice out of that dugout trough to get rid of some of the water as ice, a lot of times on a cold night you would find ice in the bucket. And you wanted to get that out of there because the liquid that remained was even more concentrated, so less boiling time. So it was work to get that ice out of there. But sometimes you would find in the sap bucket, maybe embedded in the ice, you would find a drowned mouse or flying squirrel. Well, you know, the maple producers and Ohio's ranks about 5th behind Vermont. Vermont's always number 1. And places like Maine and New York and maybe Pennsylvania or Michigan, there's quite a rivalry. Of course, Quebec, they have huge maple production up there where they have thousands of taps. And in fact, when you buy maple syrup in like a big box store, it's going to be Canadian produced, Quebec produced maple syrup. I don't know what the tariffs are going to do with that. Go ahead.
Used to be.
Used to be. Yeah. Yeah, Clyde, you got it. Yeah. So, anyway, so what do you do when you got this dead critter in your sap bucket? Well, again, with these, the story goes with these rivalries between maple producing states is up in Vermont. Oh, those fastidious New England, the Vermont maple producers. They find that dead animal in there. It's like, oh my God. They would take it out by the tail and throw it away. And they would dump that sap bucket, and they would retire that sap bucket for the season. Done.
No way. No, we don't believe this. No Vermonter worth in the salt. Boil it for 24 hours. It's all good. You're good.
Hear me out. Now you get down to New York, and what they would do is they would dump out the bucket, the animal in the sap. But they'd hang the bucket back up. Now you get into Ohio here, and they would take the animal out, but keep the sap. Now you get up into Michigan, those Michigan maple producers. Oh my gosh, they would.
They would keep the animal throughout the sap.
No, they would take that animal out by the tail and they would wring every bit of sap out of it. So they say. All right. Okay, go ahead there, Rich. So, yeah, memories of aching arms toting full gathering pails. I experienced that in my time. Got to help out with gathering at Swine Creek Reservation of Geauga Park District. Those cold morning gatherings, taking ice out of the, yeah, I did that. Okay, early signs of spring. Go ahead, that's the next one there. Yeah, you might hear the drumming of woodpeckers. You might see the raccoon tracks in the snow leading from a den tree. Owls hooting, or encountering a skunk out looking for love on a moonlit gathering night. Go ahead. Getting a tractor, getting a tractor stuck in the mud. Yeah, with never happened with the horses back in the day. Okay, next. Wagon rides out to the sugar house with a picnic supper of eggs to boil them hard right in the sap, making maple stirs, getting ready for that all-night boil. Now, during those times, a lot of family history was told to the younger generations. They might have gotten their birds and bees talk out there. Tall tales and jokes told during those late-night boils. But speaking of which, go ahead, the late-night boilings. Yeah. Well, you really had to carefully, the trick is, for making the highest quality syrup, is you want to boil it fast. Get a fast boil, and the longer you let it cook, so to speak, the darker it gets. So the higher the grade is the lighter syrup. So you want it a fast boil. So for that, you want to keep the level in the sap tank pretty low. But you had to really watch, because if you get a hot spot in the bottom of the pan there, you're gonna scorch, and that's an expensive mistake to damage your evaporator. So yeah. Or making maple candy. Go ahead there. Oh, yeah, that's the other part. Not just syrup, maple candy. You can get maple barbecue sauce and maple, all kind of stuff. And then there was, go ahead, the glory days of prize-winning syrup or sugar candies, rivalries, and friendly feuds. So the maple producers here, they will enter the first competition comes at the Maple Festival, and then some of it goes on to the state fair. No, county fair. Maple Fest, county fair, and then state fair. Now, you would think the most prestigious thing would be the state fair. No, it's the opposite. It's the most intense competition is locally. Okay. All right, go ahead. We're going to move into the mid-20th century to the present. New innovations revive and advance maple production, but initially, we get into the latter part of the 20th century, and I call trouble in the trees. Maple sugaring declined for a time after mid-century, and the reasons being labor shortages, limited family-based sugaring operations, as young people were not going into farming. So there was labor shortages. Old sugar bushes were timbered for flooring, furniture, and other hard maple products. Okay, don't jump yet. Yeah, all right. So, yeah, you can walk the woods in old places and you can find what's left of old evaporators and old metal buckets rusted through and so forth. Devastation from severe storms, ice storms and windstorms that dealt the killing blows. The last straw. You're kind of can't decide whether, it's like, God, I can't get enough help to get through the maple season, and along comes like the big storm of 1969. And it destroys your sugar bush, and it's like, that's it, I'm done. So now what happened, now you can do the next one there, the bowling alleys. In the late 60s and early 70s, bowling became a craze in Japan. So a lot of maple wood, a lot of old sugar bushes were logged and turned into bowling alleys in Japan. Yeah. Okay, next. But, however, a lot of new innovations came in the latter part of the 20th century and continue presently. Drills for tapping trees went from brace and bit to these bulky gas-powered drills with, on a backpack, or a bit that you can put into a chainsaw. And now cordless drills make it so much easier. Okay. Go ahead. And yeah, as we get in from the age of metal to the age of plastic, you get sap bags. The advantage of a sap bag is you can see through it. Whereas a metal bucket, you had to go up to it, walk all the way up to it and feel it, or look inside and see if there was, any sap in there worth emptying out, but you can see from a distance. And then the sap bags pivot on a plastic spile, and you just grab that corner through the finger hole there and tip it into your gathering pail. So again, added efficiency there. And of course, the 5-gallon buckets replace the gathering pails to a great extent. So you've got, but go ahead. Development of tubing, plastic tubing. This started back in the 1950s, and they initially started out, maybe even earlier than that, as metal piping. Well, that was no good because the sap froze in it. So as plastics developed, these plastic, you have what the little spile that fits in the tap in the tree. Then you have what's called a drop line down to a carrying line that goes to a main line. Now, initially these it relied on gravity. You'd want to put these on a hillside with one big tank at the bottom that you could go and get the sap from that. But eventually they developed pumps that would actually bring the sap right into the sugar house and eliminated gathering. So, yeah. All right. Other things that were changing is evaporators were starting to be powered by propane, gas, or fuel oil, and which is a lot easier than dealing with splitting wood and stocking up on wood for traditionally wood-fired evaporator. Okay. All right, go ahead there. Yeah, and it keeps going on. I mean, you had the latter part of the 20th century, you had even more efficient evaporators, and you had, reverse osmosis machines that take the sap and draw more out of the water, leaving a more sweet, sugar-heavy sap to boil, and then cuts down on boiling time. Improved filter presses, instead of pouring it through a wool sock, whatever, these powered high pressure filtering mechanisms that would get that sugar sand out of there, and heated canners for even better quality and a tighter seal and so forth. Okay. Go ahead. Next. All right. Now, with this kind of resurgence or renaissance in maple sugaring came a number of different regulations and so forth, or guidelines. In this case, tapping trees. Used to be on a big open grown maple, they would just ring the trunk with buckets. And in this day and age, when you realize the effects of air pollution, of road salt and exotic insects and so forth, more care or attention is given to the care and the health of the maple trees. So over tapping is one. So you don't tap a tree until it's at least 10 inches in diameter, or if not a foot. And then until you get that much more girth to the tree before you add a second bucket, and never more than 2.
Dan, is there actually a maple police?
Well, there is, as you'll see, the Ohio Maple Producers Association that promotes maple production, but also promotes these guidelines. The other big change is parts that were still metal, like the storage tanks where your sap is brought into as you're boiling it, and even the pails to take the syrup off, that's all gone to stainless steel to avoid lead, the lead and the solder of the old tin and so forth. Okay. Yeah, you had steam hoods and all these things to make much more better syrup faster. So you can say sappy days are here again. Maple sugaring has always been labor intensive with weather dependent conditions for sap flow, making dates and duration of sugaring unpredictable. However, this parade of new technologies has brought about efficiency and automation. And this has, with less labor needed, you could work 40 hours a week in whatever profession you were in, and you could come home, and there your sap was already collected, already brought to the sugar house. You turn on the evaporator, and instead of spending all night in the sugar house, you could get her done a lot quick. So it's opened up sugaring to anywhere from a hobbyist to somebody who wants a side job, a seasonal side job like that, with better equipment and so forth to do this. Okay, then you have, as I mentioned, organization agencies such as the Ohio Maple Producers Association, the Maple Producers Association of Northeast Ohio, and the Ohio State University with its Extension Service has a lot of expertise available. They have maple trade shows, they have seminars, they have training and so forth. And this brings me to the point where next month, we're going to do part 2 of this maple production. We're going to have Les Ober, who's the extension agent for Geauga County and is like the guru of modern maple production, will be describing these techniques and going into more detail than I'm prepared to do on these modern innovations, along with challenges that we have with a changing climate, changing markets, and so forth. So, March 12th. Yeah, we want to be back. Okay. So yeah, we have stresses with non-native funguses and insects and so forth that are a challenge and a worry. It's something that maple producers need to contend with. Okay, we'll go to the next one there. Yeah. And there we go. Maple producers standardizing and changing the grading system and so forth like that. So now the maple syrup industry persists today with maple syrup, sugar, sauces, and beverages as popular delicacy gourmet items available in farm markets, supermarkets, gift shops, with an abundance of recipes that capitalize on the uniquely sweet flavor of pure maple syrup. And there's Harvey's going to pass. They've got some Geauga County produced. Yep. Too much sugar. Yeah. So it's kind of a gourmet food these days, not so much a staple. All right. And this, if you're used to just, log cabin and the corn syrup, flavored corn syrup, this is the real deal. And once you've had this, there's no going back. And no eatery in Geauga County would dare serve pancakes with anything but real maple syrup, let me tell you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Dan, what grade was that?
What?
Your syrup, what grade is that?
This would be probably, it should say, it's probably going to be medium, what they call medium amber.
Yeah, okay.
The light syrup is real light, but a lot of people, the most popular is the medium amber to maybe even dark amber. It's more robust, it's more flavorful. You get beyond that and you use it for cooking. But yeah. Okay, so the Maple Festival. Yeah, here we go. The Geauga County's famous Maple Festival was founded in 1926. This will be the 100th anniversary. On Chardon Square to promote maple syrup sales for many years. They built a large wooden building erected on the square to provide, goes back to the 20s and 30s, an indoor shelter from the cold weather of early spring. After the festival, the shelter was dismantled. There you go, there's a picture of it. Dismantled and the lumber was repurposed. Okay, next. People came from all over Northeast Ohio by auto, by interurban rail, and they even had special runs of when the Baltimore and Ohio Lake Branch ran to Chardon, and it was connected with the B&O rail system, so they, from big cities all over, Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown, could get to the Maple Festival. The passenger service ended about the year I was born. So, okay, next. So, back in the day, they part of the Maple Festival, and to a small extent, amid all the carnivals and everything, the rides and game booths and everything like that, there still is some dedication to maple syrup. There is still the new sugarhouse on Chardon Square, and they would kind of do a show or demonstrate maple sugaring back in the old days in the 1800s. Okay, that's carried on by my friend Jerry Tverziak, maple producing family, and he has collected. You see the big kettle there? He's got the hollow log, and he's demonstrating the history, and it's about the last vestige of maple history and the Maple Festival.
Do we still see him at work doing this?
At the festival, yeah. Yeah, by the flagpole at the south end of the square. Yep. And if you promise me a maple cocktail, you might see me up there. Oh boy.
Yet another use.
You haven't had a cocktail till you've had a maple cocktail. Okay. You got to wrap it up here. So go ahead. Contests. Always contests. And let's see. Now, not only contests with syrup, but they had a festival king and queen. They had draft horse pulling contests. They used to have lumberjack. Well, I think they still might have lumberjack, where they get a piece of like soft hardwood, like aspen, that you can about cut with a butter knife, and they get the big two-man, saw. See how fast they can get through it. And go ahead. Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, beard shaving. They don't do a lot of these things anymore, but they still have the bathtub races. Yeah. Yeah. And the old St. Helens, which I think has been revitalized, this St. Helens of Newberry, their unicycle team. Okay, next. And they've had celebrities there over the years. John Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy, when John was running for Congress, he came through the Maple Festival. Dwight Eisenhower there. It was always tradition to give the first run syrup to the president. Okay, next. Yeah, so, this is always, traditionally, the Maple Festival was held the Sunday following Easter Sunday. Well, Easter floats all over. It could be in March and it can be in April. And there were times, and I can remember, this was 1994, when an April blizzard just devastated the Maple Festival. It caved in tents and everything. And so now they in the last few years, they have moved it to the last weekend in April, which still isn't a safe bet, but as we know. Okay, next. Yeah, so postcards and so forth promoting the Geauga County's maple heritage as the bucolic land of maple syrup, along with the beautiful maple maids. Go ahead. Yeah, there you go. So.
The maple maids?
Well, yeah. Harvey? Doris, I think it's time to take him home. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead next. The Chardon Lakes Sugar House. That's something that before I got to Chardon 40 some years ago, this was already long gone, but this was a popular tourist spot too. Okay. Today it's the Maple Sugar House and Meeting Room on Chardon Square. And go ahead. And also another older public sugar house and a tourist attraction for decades has been the Burton Chamber of Commerce's sugar house. Also, the Ohio Maple Producers Association hosts the Maple Madness tours, where different maple producers open up their sugar houses to the public. People do like an auto tour. And at the Great Geauga County Fair, the Ohio Maple Producers Association has their own building, sugar house there. And then we have, places where you can get syrup year-round. A lot of the farm markets and good old Richard's Maple Products that was featured at the World's Fair, was it, or the Great Exposition back in the 1930s. So, yeah. Okay. So, and pancakes, oh my gosh. You can get pancakes at every churches and VFW and American Legion Post and the fire department in Burton, Century Village in Burton. It's all over the place. Okay, go ahead. And then, of course, the Saps Horizon Sundays, where the history of maple sugaring from literally prehistoric hot rocks and a hollow log up to modern sugar house there at Swine Creek Reservation. This year, they are moving it back into February now, starting February 22nd and then the first 2 Sundays in March, featuring a gathering like the old-fashioned way. And this is always, from years of doing this, I just love this. You get Grandma and Grandpa taking the kids out, following the horse and the sugar bush. They're emptying the buckets into gathering pails and then into the sap sled. And you can hear the, see, this is what we did when we were kids. And but just a wonderful, creating family memories there. So, and again, just displaying that whole history up through the kettles and so forth. Okay, let's go next. Oh yes, then for 31 years, we had, again, to the newer populations in Geauga County, you're trying to establish a sense of place. And what is the local heritage? Well, besides snow, we're most famous for maple syrup. So to celebrate the maple syrup, we held the Tree Tappers Ball, again, from 1989 to 2019. And we always had a caller, Bob Smokula, late of, used to be at Goose Acres Folk Music Center down here. You remember that, on Cornell. And he relocated to West Virginia when he married a woman who worked for the Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service. And we would always have more or less the same group of musicians year to year. It's an Appalachian-style square dance with some of the reels and so forth like that. And it was, but we always performed under a different name every year. We were among many, like Buddy Sapp and the Sour Notes. We were Hot Cake Keller and the Griddle Greasers one year. We were Lost Sausage Lou and the Missing Links. It's just big fun. And, people just loving it. And a lot of people, this is the one, they hadn't done this kind of thing since gym class in junior high. Or didn't go to the regular contra dances and so forth, but they would turn out for this. So up in we started off the Swine Creek Reservation Lodge. We outgrew that very quickly and ended up in the Parkman Community House in their upstairs hall, which at first scared the hell out of people because the floor would bounce. And well, it turns out they used to actually roller skate up there. And the floor is actually supported by steel cables underneath. So yeah, it worked. So that was big fun. Okay, is there anything else? Yes. Yep, competitions. State Fair. And there you are. So, all right, there you go. Thank you.
Harvey, let me have the mic for a minute. I got something you can add to your speech. If you really want a treat, when there's a fresh snow, you pack it into a pan. Bring your maple syrup up to a simmer for 5 minutes or so. After boil it off a little bit, and then you dribble it on that snow. Stick a fork in, I can see it, yes.
Yeah.
When you roll it up, you will not believe how sweet it is.
That's a great memory. Yeah. Yeah, let me,
Just make sure it's not yellow snow.
Oh, yeah. Well, it will be after.
Doris, start the car. Yeah, that was a treat, even going way back in time, where they would boil to heavy syrup, and they would then pour the syrup, dribble it on the snow, and they called that jack wax, I think, or something. Yeah, yeah, and it was a big treat. Yeah. All right.
Okay, well, let's give it up for Dan Best. Any chance on seconds on the...
I have more cups, and let me see. Oh yeah, we still got
There's more,
There's
so,
more.
I mean, if you're not driving, if you've got a designated driver and you give it a shot. Thanks, Dan, this is great. So a couple things about Dan Best.
You said enough already. Geez.
Dan Best's birthday. And what number have we achieved?
Yeah, what do you think?
Was it significant?
Yeah, big time.
Like a 7-0?
Yeah.
Yay! Yeah! Welcome to the club, my friend.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for turning out. Thanks for Dan for a fabulous program. I mean, this is the deep dive. You now know everything you need to know. Please take this information and share it with everybody, because they need to know the story about maple syrup and sugaring and know why Geauga County really is the epicenter of the entire world. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you next month. Thanks for coming out.
This talk will be on YouTube.
Yes.
Can you tap any maple tree, or is it only sugar maple tree?
Well, that's a good question. We kind of, what? All right, yes. Yes, you can tap any kind of maple tree. However, the ones that tend to be sweeter and is sugar maple, and the very closely related black maple. From a lumberman standpoint or a maple producer standpoint, they don't differentiate. You can, in a number of producers, do tap red maple, which are ubiquitous and very common tree. They tend to bud, and when I was alluding to that name, buddy sap, what signals the end of the sugaring season, maple production season, is as season advances, the sap begins to change in its nature, and it takes on kind of a bitter, rancid kind of taste and smell. They call that buddy, because it's getting close to the point where it's actually going to fuel, what sap is all about, is fueling the opening of the buds. So, yeah. So it gets buddy, and that pretty much shuts it down. Red maples tend to get buddy earlier, and also I think red maple tends to produce more sugar sand too, to filter out.
Tell them you need about 40 gallons to make 1 gallon.
Well, that's true. I didn't get into all the fine points here, but at a 2% sugar content of sap, you're looking at a little over 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. And you might have a sweeter sugar bush that could go to 2.5, and which means less boiling time. Yeah. Well, in a good season, a single tap may produce 10 gallons of sap. So,
Sure, 10 gallons of sap.
right, right.
Yeah, that 40 to 1 ratio is pretty important. I used to teach biology, but I lived right on the right next to the square in Chardon, so they always tapped my trees out in front of my house for the up on the square. So I would go out and gather some of the sap in buckets and take them to my classroom at Wycliffe and demonstrate how to make maple syrup to my students. The problem is, I didn't have a sugar bush or a sugar shack. I had a classroom.
Yeah.
So I would put, well, maybe 5 gallons into a big canning pot, boil it and boil it and boil it till it got way down and you could taste the sugar. Then I'd let all the students taste the sweetness. But in the meantime, all of that water goes somewhere. And where it went was all over my classroom. So all my posters, all my pictures. So I learned to do it out in the greenhouse after.
I remember many times I heard, people trying to boil down sap on their kitchen stove, and they end up losing their wallpaper. And my ancestors there, when they made it, they would boil it initially outside, and then they would finish it off in the summer kitchen. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Heard that a lot of times.
And you got something?
Going back to the first 5 minutes, why does the sap ascend when it's cold and descend when it's warm?
Okay.
I wish it would be the other way around, so I don't.
I always thought it was too, but no, apparently not. And it's a physics thing with, my Harvard project physics did not give me but it sets up an internal pressure there. The temperature changes that makes it rise during the cold of night and then descend during the warmth of day.
Just because.
Just
Just because.
yeah, just because. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, one last thing about Dan Best, because, this has been a great education. But, this man, mild-mannered as he might seem, put a bass guitar, an electric bass guitar in his hands. And he is the foundation of the Hickory Rockers, this band that is Americana, early roots rock and roll. So be looking for the Hickory Rockers at Sharon James Winery or anyway, just look for it, and then look for that bass player just thumping away and holding the bottom end. That's big. Thanks for coming out, folks.